Now, although Newcastle have actually experienced success recently as they beat Liverpool to win the EFL Cup, they have not been historically known to have much success when it comes to winning trophies. And no example as to why this is better displayed than in the 95-96 Premier League season. And for that, we need to go way back to August 1995 or the start of the 1995-96 Premier League season. Manager of Newcastle, Kevin Keegan, had recruited well over the summer of 1995. Firstly, Newcastle paid $6 million for the centre-forward powerhouse Les Ferdinand to lead their attack. In addition to this, Newcastle also brought in a bright talent in David Ginola from PSG, who at the time was at his prime in his career, and offered flair, creativity, and unpredictability on the wing. So with new additions to the squad, Ferdinand, Ginola and multiple others were ready to take the 95-96 Premier League season by storm, and that is exactly what they did. Like Premier League champions would, from the first whistle of that season, the new and improved Newcastle team breezed through their first 4 games against Coventry, Bolton, Sheffield Wednesday and Middlesbrough, comfortably situating themselves at the top of the Premier League table by September 1995. They weren't just beating teams, but dismantling them with goals, style and swagger. The team that had previously finished 6th place the season before was now leading the title race, with a special mention to summer signings Les Ferdinand and David Ginola, as well as other key names in the squad as they became some of the most in-form Premier League players. It was clear that the league was experiencing a new and improved Newcastle team to the years before. They played free-flowing football and goals galore up front. Manager Kevin Keegan was implementing Keegan ball throughout his team, and they were playing like total champions. Between September and November was the absolute peak of their season. In October, the world watched in awe as Newcastle put in a performance for the ages, beating Bolton 6-1, including a hat-trick from, you guessed it, summer signing Les Ferdinand. November saw similar success as they went to Liverpool, beat them 2-1, and then finished off defending champions Blackburn 1-0. And as for Newcastle's closest Premier League rival, Man United, they were sat in second place, with their main striker Eric Cantona serving part of his 9-month suspension for his kung fu kick on a fan at Selhurst Park. This meant that by December 1995, Newcastle were flying high, 39 points from 16 games, with their biggest rivals for the title struggling with form and sitting a comfortable 10 points at the top of the Premier League table. The title, for the first time since 1927, was in sight for Newcastle. But as we know in football, comfort is dangerous, because after Christmas, their season went from control to caution. On the 9th of December, Newcastle somewhat tripped against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, losing 1-0. Not a disaster, but maybe a warning sign. Similarly to this, they travelled to second place and 2-time champions Manchester United. The King, Eric Cantona, had returned to Manchester after his suspension, but Andy Cole, a former Newcastle player, and Roy Keane were in fine form, sitting down the Magpies. This meant that Newcastle lost 2-0 to a ruthless and well-structured Alex Ferguson team. But that day, Man United did make a statement from their win and plant a seed of doubt for Newcastle and manager Kevin Keegan. By late January, however, Newcastle had gained themselves a monumental 12-point lead over Man United in second place. But they still were not home and done yet, as they would see in their next 3 games. Firstly, Keegan's men travelled to London to take on the Hammers, a routine game for the club, especially after the form they had previously been in. West Ham at the time were a mid-table club at best. Maybe it was the atmosphere in this stadium, or the pressure of being sat at the top of the Premier League, but Newcastle just could not finish off West Ham, even with new and exciting January transfer signing Faustino Asprilla, and lost their 4th game that season. And elsewhere at Old Trafford, Man United kept closing the gap between first and second with a convincing win over Everton, now just a 5-point gap. To make matters worse, Newcastle in their next game would then travel to relegation-threatened Manchester City, but only came out with a 3-3 draw, whereas second-place Man United tugged at Newcastle's ankles and thrashed Bolton 6-0. Now a 4-point gap. Man United were creeping closer and just waiting for their opportunity to snatch the lead away from Newcastle, and they would get that opportunity on the 4th of March 1996 as Newcastle hosted Man United at St James's Park for what would be the defining game of the 95-96 season and was billed by many as the title decider. From the first whistle, Newcastle absolutely dominated Manchester United, battering the opposing defence with shot after shot after shot. But instead of Newcastle gaining the limelight after the match, the real star of the show was Man United goalkeeper Peter Schmeichel, who had what the press dubbed his greatest ever performance. Newcastle registered 35 shots at the Man United keeper, but none prevailed. They just could not put a ball past the superhuman goalkeeper in the net. But then, in the 51st minute, ex-Newcastle player Andy Cole picked up the ball on the edge of the penalty area, laid in Phil Neville, who would then deliver a classy cross to the back post of Newcastle's goal. This was Cantona's only shot of the match, but it was all he needed, and like a world-class goalscorer, he slotted it in to score the only goal of the match and put Man United within 1 point of the title leaders. From Man United's perspective, however, confidence was high, and for manager Alex Ferguson, it was not a matter of if Newcastle would drop points, but when Newcastle would drop points. Although the match after, Newcastle would deliver a comfortable 3-0 display over West Ham, Man United would remain 1 point away from the league leaders, beating Man City 3-2 and making it 11 games since their last loss. Then would come Arsenal. Kevin Keegan's side, once commanding leaders at the top of the table, arrived in North London desperately needing a response after recent stumbles. Newcastle looked a shadow of the free-flowing team that thrilled the country for much of the season. And because of this, lost to 2 well-deserved goals from the Gunners. And this match would put Man United into first place and dethrone Newcastle for the first time that whole season. And then came Anfield. So the next few matches would be some of the most title defining of the whole season. And next they would head to Anfield on the 3rd of April 1996 for what would be later known as the greatest Premier League match ever. The game was a constant back and forth between the two teams, Newcastle and Liverpool, and it started with a goal from Robbie Fowler in the 2nd minute. Newcastle would respond promptly with a well-crafted team goal coming from a cross from Asprilla and a finish from none other than Les Ferdinand. Then a goal from Ginola making it 2-1 to Newcastle before half-time. Already an exciting game. But the second half gave the game the title of the best Premier League match ever. Minute 55, Robbie Fowler. Minute 57, Asprilla. Minute 67, Stan Collymore. And in the 90th minute, Collymore won it for Liverpool, and with it, broke the black and white heart and further saw the title slip away that much further from Keegan's men. That game against Liverpool made just 1 win in the last 6 games for Newcastle, and the tenacious side the Premier League was introduced to at the start of the season seemed like it was fading. But the title was not secure for Man United yet. They were not in the clear, and manager Alex Ferguson knew that. Now, Alex Ferguson is one of the best managers in Premier League history, and not just because of his eye for a sensational transfer, or even for his coaching ability, but due to his intelligence when it came to mind games. He knew that Newcastle and Kevin Keegan would be feeling pressure. Newcastle was relatively new to fighting for Premier League titles, and Kevin Keegan had only been managing for 4 years. Ferguson knew he could break Keegan with the right words and secure the title for Man United. Following a close 1-0 win against Leeds, in his post-match interview, Alex Ferguson took a small jab at Newcastle and implied that Newcastle's final opponents of the season, Leeds, Tottenham and Nottingham Forest, would let Newcastle win, just so Man United would not win the Premier League once again. But the public comment was enough to do what Ferguson aimed and would get under Keegan's skin very effectively. The manager stayed quiet up until the 29th of April, and after a Newcastle win against Leeds, Kevin Keegan, in a pivotal and now infamous moment, snapped by saying,
"I'll tell you, honestly, I will love it if we beat them. Love it."
It wasn't anger, it was desperation. And with 2 draws against Forest and Spurs, the league was confirmed, and with it, Newcastle's hopes of victory. With Roy Keane from Man United stating, "We always knew they would slip up."